Elbows again from that exposed head.
In 2002, the UFC is nearly down for the count.
UFC, it was dying.
But across the Pacific, Japan's Pride Fighting Championship thrives.
Pride is very well funded.
Pride gets the best fighters in the world, doing the most sensational fights.
Another kick! Another kick!
The people freaking loved it.
Building a reputation as the most brutal MMA promotion on earth.
He said, Don, son, I'm sorry. So what for? It's for not giving you a good enough fight. I said, you're crazy. You give me a better fight, you'd have killed me.
Pride's first rule.
This is horrible. This is like Jaws.
Is that there are no rules.
Pride was just a circus almost. That's how crazy it was.
They wanted you to be on whatever you want to be on.
They offered him extra money to lose the fight. He took it.
How the hell did that happen?
And secretly calling the shots of this outlaw MMA promotion.
He was somebody you don't want to mess with.
Are genuine gangsters.
They can do everything they want. They rule the city.
Criminals willing to do anything to keep control.
He hung himself. What? Why?
Was he murdered?
It's hard to say. And not only that, you don't want to say on TV.
In Japan, martial arts have been practiced for centuries. Karate, sumo, aikido, and jiu-jitsu all trace their origins to the land of the rising sun. But for much of the 20th century, it's pro wrestling that reigns as the most popular Japanese combat sport, including All Japan Pro Wrestling and Antonio Inoki's New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Many audience still believed pro wrestling was a real fight. My name is Shu Hirata. I'm an MMA manager, but also I was a writer at the time when the Pride Fighting Championship was peaking in the market. But of course, there's the other half of the public thinking that's a show. Maybe pro wrestling is not really a real fight.
Both halves come together in the early 90s with a newfound devotion to competitions that fuse pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. Kickboxing promotion K1 and its rival, Pancrase Hybrid Wrestling, present breathtaking matchups with real fighting and submission techniques. These MMA promotions shatter pro wrestling's illusion of combat.
8 tough warriors who must face the fury of the octagon.
Thousands of miles away, the Ultimate Fighting Championship is trying to hook Americans on MMA. Featuring a shocking level of brutality never seen before in the U.S.
But look at him, swinging the arm like a club.
You need to go back and watch the early days of the UFC. It was really neat back then. I am Don Fry, and the UFC, I was known as the Predator. UFC didn't have any rules except for no biting, no eye gouging, and everybody did it anyways.
Trying to get Coleman to move.
The UFC is co-created by Rorion Gracie, whose family is legendary in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The BJJ system of self-defense is first developed by the Gracie patriarch, Helio Gracie, and the UFC is created by Rorion to showcase his family's dominant style of martial arts.
The lightest guy from the whole tournament wins the freaking tournament. How is that possible?
When you're good, you don't have to be violent.
Bas Rudener, former 3-time world champion in Japan at Pancrase and UFC heavyweight champion. The Gracies were freaking ruling the submission game because that was their bread and butter.
Back in Japan, promoter and former pro wrestler Satoru Sayama, also known as Tiger Mask, is inspired by the UFC's free-for-all format. In 1994, he launches his own MMA event called Vale Tudo. Vale Tudo takes its name from a no-rules combat sport in Brazil, and Satoru recruits Rickson Gracie to be his main contender.
This is the closest thing of a real street fight ever happened in Japan before.
Vale Tudo 94 brought to the public attention the realistic aspect of the MMA. My name is Rickson Gracie. I'm one of the members of the Gracie family, which has been involved in martial arts since the day one.
Unlike the uniform fighting styles seen in K1 and Pancrase, at Vale Tudo, anything goes.
For me, it's always a pleasure to see this kind of introduction to MMA to the Japanese audience.
The Gracie's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is both familiar and different from anything Japanese fight fans have seen.
Of course, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is coming from the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu becomes like a everything goes type of fight, which requires much more of the fighter.
The Gracie fighting style has already proved effective in the UFC.
It's one of the fundamental positions in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu right now.
Where Rickson's brother Royce wins his second tournament months before Rickson's debut in Japan.
He's going to snap his arm. He did too.
So it's a disorganized confrontation and makes Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu more effective than others because we can adapt. We're comfortable in every aspect of the fight, with different than the traditional Jiu-Jitsu was. We repackage Jiu-Jitsu, we make a better, more effective art and bring it back to Japan, and they love that.
Rickson submits 3 fighters in one night and issues a challenge.
We say we can beat any other martial arts. So we create the Gracie Challenge, which was an open challenge for any martial artist who tried to test themselves against us.
I'm pretty confident. I don't know if somebody out there can beat me up. I'm here already to keep defending the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu tradition.
Vale Tudo turns Rickson into a celebrity in Japan.
You know, I could not go anywhere without the crowd go around me. That's kind of put me close to the heart of the Japanese audience, and I felt very blessed by that.
But Rickson is not so popular with Japan's pro wrestlers, who worry the rising popularity of mixed martial arts is killing their sport.
The world of wrestling, they start losing terrain. So when they say, oh, we do MMA too, I can fight MMA, I want to fight Rickson.
Japan's Universal Wrestling Federation, the UWF, publicly taunts Rickson to fight one of their own.
Professional wrestlers start using my name to become a possible challenge in their arena. And I could not accept that because in their arena, they fake fights.
Undaunted, the UWF names the wrestler to fight Rickson. Yoji Anjo, a heel, is one of Japan's most popular pro wrestlers.
Again, they were pro wrestling promotions. They wanted to try to convince the audience it's a real fight.
Anjo invited me to fight for real. He said he wanted to come into LA to kick my ass. I said, if you come, you come.
Mr. Yoji Anjo went to California with all the pro wrestling journalists.
On December 7th, 1994, Yoji arrives at the Gracie Academy in Santa Monica, spoiling for a fight.
The day they come, I was in my house eating, and my assistant called me and said, Rickson, they're here. I immediately get into my car, start to drive into the academy. As I arrive, at the school at the time, it was about 20 guys practicing. And then Anjo, with another about 6 or 8 different press guys, reporters. I saw just the president of UWF, and he asked me, Mr. Gracie, the fighter is outside. If you want, he can come in to fight you. I said, okay, yes, bring him in.
The Japanese reporters are forced to stay outside. Inside, the rest of Yoji's entourage and Rickson's students suddenly have front row seats to an international showdown.
He's my height, little thicker, I made 185 pounds, he made 220. Anjo has some skills. He's a great martial artist. He's been fighting forever. And he was a tough guy. I throw him to the ground, start to beat him up. He turns around, expect me to choke him. But I was not intent to choke him. If I just choke him and he wake up, said, oh, nothing happened, he can lie, he can do whatever. I have to hurt him, make him bleed, break his nose and beat him up, and then he turns back again to me, and then I choke him out and put him to sleep.
In less than 5 minutes, the fight is over with Yoji left lying in a pool of his own blood. The pro wrestler suffering a beatdown by the Brazilian jiu-jitsu master.
When I won, my students grabbed me and lift me up and they party a little bit. But it was not something I am proud of myself. It was just something I have to do to keep my reputation on.
Instead, it's Rickson's reputation that takes a beating. The fight makes headlines in Japan with a photo of Yoji emerging battered and bloodied from the Gracie Academy. With the reporters left outside, Yoji feels free to claim he was ambushed inside the gym.
He said he was jumped by the crew, by my guys. He did what he has to do to keep his image, to promote controversy. But fortunately, I have the tape.
Rickson's assistant had filmed the entire fight. So Rickson calls a press conference to counter Yoji's claims, and the videotape becomes Exhibit A.
It was a great, lucky move for me to get this all recorded.
I actually saw the tape of that fight. I saw when Rickson took a back of Mr. Anjo, he stuck his 2 fingers right into Mr. Anjo's nose and pulled back and went for the choke. There was no rules, but that ended up making Mr. Rickson Gracie very famous in Japan.
Eventually, the public will see. I may be gonna show this tape one day, but it's rated R, too violent.
As with all memorable fights, the Rickson and Yoji dojo fight gets everyone thinking one word: rematch. An ambitious TV producer, Nobuyuki Sakakibara, sees an opportunity.
And that's where organizers invite me to fight him in a big event called Pride. They said, I want to bring a new event to capitalize in your audience, to capitalize on the momentum. So could you be interested to fight in this new event? I intend to do it. I said, yes. If the rules are proper, if it's a serious business, I'm in.
Out of the Rickson-Yoji grudge match, a new MMA promotion called Pride is born. Rickson Gracie's name will help lure some of the best fighters in the world to Japan. But Pride will also attract a notorious criminal organization, one that will move in on the promotion and threaten the lives of anyone who gets in their way. The controversy surrounding the bloody, unsanctioned brawl between Rickson Gracie and Japanese pro wrestler Yoji Anjo provokes a grudge match. It also prompts TV producer Nobuyuki Sakakibara, fellow executive Naoto Morishita, and a mysterious financier named Hiromichi Mimose, who invests $50 million to team up and promote the bout. Pride Fighting Championship's inaugural event will pit Gracie against Yoji Anjo's master, Nobuhiko Takada, the #1 pro wrestler at Japan's Universal Wrestling Federation.
Because of the fact that Anjo lost terribly, it's not like, oh, Rickson, you have to beat Takada now. It's almost like a Takada, you have to get up and beat this guy. Otherwise, you just beat up your students, and as a master, what are you gonna do?
The pro wrestler thought they are the toughest, they are the strongest. And if somebody claimed that I'm better than you, or your pro wrestling is fake, let's do it. My name is Tadashi Tanaka. I'm a journalist and critic in the field of MMA more than, I think, 50 years. Initially, people were fascinated by this idea, who is the strongest, Takada or Rickson Gracie?
With Takada and Rickson headlining, organizers fill out the card by importing 3 fighters from the struggling UFC: Oleg Taktarov, Dan the Beast Severn, and Gary Big Daddy Goodrich.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Gary Goodrich. I'm a star. UFC They weren't keeping me busy enough at the time. So Pride called me up and said, Gary, you want to fight here? I said, yeah, okay, let's go. I knew it was in Japan. That's it. That's all I knew.
On October 11th, 1997, Pride's debut inside a 50,000-seat stadium may have been overly optimistic.
It was at the Tokyo Dome, and it didn't really sell out, but still, it was a big news in a way that very popular pro wrestlers are really stepping in to do a big, real fight.
The main event, Rickson Gracie, like him or hate him, has got killer instincts.
In 13 years, no one has defeated Rickson in a professional fight. Takada plans to be the first.
He's a dangerous fighter. I see him with the potential to beat me up if I make a mistake.
The hometown crowd cheers for Takada, waiting for Gracie to make that mistake.
Back position, beautiful, tight.
They wait in vain.
Worst case scenario has just unfolded for Takada.
I set up the arm lock.
He's gonna go for armbar. There it is. There we go. Oh, he's got it.
So when I have a perfect lock, I felt like he was done.
Takada's got the hands locked. Takada taps out.
Mr. Takada got smoked.
That was a quick one, folks.
This is when many of the so-called fight fans in Japan and pro wrestling fans in Japan realized that, okay, maybe BJJ fighters are the best fighters in the world.
There's Yoji Anjo, the man who Rickson beat down in the studio. Yep.
He was the first so-called foreign, non-Japanese MMA fighters who really captured the heart of the Japanese fans.
And in hope of flaming that passion with foreign MMA fighters, Pride organizes 3 more events the following year.
Rickson gets the mount again.
And after that, Pride gets the best fighters in the world doing the most sensational fights.
While Japanese support for Pride's unrestrained fighting style is growing, its American competitor, the UFC, is imploding from governmental repercussions over its no-holds-barred format.
Elbows again from that exposed head.
Known for its blood-soaked battles in the cage, the UFC incurs the wrath of state legislators, who begin banning mixed martial arts in states across the country.
UFC was dying. Pride was very well funded, and they appreciated your training and your skill and your knowledge that went into it. Sacrifices, a lot of sacrifices. They would tell you, we don't care if you win or lose, just give us a great fight and you'll be back. I never quit and always gave them their money's worth, plus some.
Pride aggressively incites the conduct that is getting the UFC banned, instituting a card system to encourage more violence by financially penalizing inaction.
You know, they have a red card, yellow card. If you get the yellow card, you get deduction on the points, and same for the red card, you know? And you lose the part of the purse, too. So if you get a yellow card, maybe 10% loss.
So Pride Fighting Championships wanted action. And they will tell you in the rules meeting, if there's no action, you're gonna get a yellow card.
So in that sense, I think yellow card and red card was a part of the plan to make fighters aggressive.
That red card made him see red.
Pride's rules-free format allows fighters to engage in the most brutal tactics imaginable.
They did prohibit headbutt to the face. They no fish hooking, you know, no punches to the balls. But still, they left some of the rules like stomp into the face, sucker kick to the head on down grounded opponent, which would never be allowed in MMA here today.
Oh my God.
Pride's goal of building the world's most violent and bloody fighting promotion informs their every action, or inaction.
What was the drug testing like at Pride?
Non-existent, you know.
They took your pee and nothing ever happened. They'd just take your pee and throw it out in the sink. And sometimes that wouldn't even take it. I think they wanted people to look like Greek gods. They wanted people to look huge, big muscles and this because it made their show better. They wanted you to be on whatever you want to be on.
If you see a guy completely veined out, freaking traps everywhere, you know he's on something, right? So I don't know what those pee tests were testing, but yeah, there were some gigantic guys there. Let me say it like that.
And what about having competitors fight in their weight class? That's for the wimps at the UFC. Pride is an open weight competition.
He's going to be tired in 5 minutes because he's too big.
Which leads to some jaw-dropping pairings in the ring.
I've never seen a human being that big in my life.
Pride Fighting Championships, it was just wild. They, you know, if you see a sumo wrestler who is 500 pounds fighting a guy who's 180 pounds.
No, don't go for a single. You got to be out of your mind. This is horrible. This is like Jaws.
And then the 180-pound guy beats him. You know, that's crazy.
He tapped out.
Pride was just a circus almost. That's how crazy it was.
Looking to steal away fans from other fight promotions, Pride approaches former Pancrase champion Boss Rutan to join the circus as ringmaster.
They said, we're going to go live in 2 shows from now. It's going to be the championship, the 2000 championship. We're going to go live to America. Do you want to be a commentator? Sure.
I'm Boss Rutan. We're going to be working together.
Hey, I don't know. I was a crazy guy then. They go, what is she doing? I said, well, just let him go. Just let him go.
I'm looking sharp, boss.
I had no leash. I could do and say whatever I want.
But Pride likes to keep its foreign fighters tethered, even ordering some to take a dive as a way to create and maintain their preference for Japanese champions.
For the first couple of Prides, they had a lot of fake fights. They had Japan really fighting against everybody else, and they wanted you to lose. They used to tell people what they want them to. I want you to win this fight. I want you to lose this fight. And I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
Nobody ever asked me to throw a fight. Kind of hurt my feelings. I think that they figured eventually I'd get hurt and wouldn't be able to win myself, you know, so.
In the business, a predetermined fight is called a work. And one of the most infamous in Pride's history occurs at its 5th event in 1999. Organizers have pro wrestler Nobuhiko Takada in a seeming mismatch against the UFC's first heavyweight champion, Mark Coleman.
Mark Coleman, undefeated in the octagon.
Coleman is the godfather of ground and pound and one of the most notorious brawlers in MMA.
Coleman's going to take him down. 100% sure.
There was a lot of talk. It had already slipped out that apparently it was going to be a work.
There it is.
It gets out of the back. Every freaking body knows. All the fighters were talking about it. And I was always very against that.
Takada has got to move on this.
And when you look at that fight, where Mr. Takada won is kind of unnatural leg submission.
No, he's giving it, what the hell? Oh, no.
It's easy for Coleman to kind of get out.
There's no, what?
And he tapped it pretty quickly.
Oh, no. I don't believe this. How the hell did that happen?
According to Coleman, he needed the money for his wife's surgery or something like that at the time. So when they offered him extra money to lose the fight, he took it.
Oh, my God. Takada beat Mark Coleman. Unbelievable. This absolutely defies reality.
I was just really ticked off by it. But, yeah, that happened, unfortunately, a few times in the beginning.
They wanted the public to follow the game. So they wanted their guys to win because people followed them. And I understand, it's his business.
But the business is still suffering. Even after Pride signs a national broadcast deal with Japan's Fuji TV, the company is still in the red and losing money fast.
Pride was never really successful in the beginning. Pride 2 show, when they had the Yokohama Arena show, they probably filled maybe 2,000 seats out of 14,000 seats. I was there, and I remember maybe I counted maybe 2,000. So what they did was they did turn off all the lights on the second floor, so it won't look that empty on television.
As the company lurches towards financial disaster, it's a colorful pro wrestler who surprisingly pulls Pride back from the brink. Despite Pride's early promise to be the mixed martial arts antidote to staged professional wrestling, organizers struggle to fill arenas and pay their bills. So it's not without irony that their potential bailout comes from a popular UWF pro wrestler named Kazushi Sakuraba, who defects to Pride in 1998.
He's just a young boy in a pro wrestling system. Who is Sakuraba?
Sakuraba has been rolling a lot, so he knows his submissions. And suddenly he decides to start fighting for real.
He was a little guy, but he had the striking, he had the submissions, he had the ring presence.
Spanking him. He's already used to fighting in front of a crowd, so there's no nerves, no nothing.
Sakuraba's pro wrestling theatrics combined with his eccentric persona to make him a much-needed draw for Pride.
Sakuraba was a Japanese favorite.
He was very famous, the most famous athlete and fighter, in the country. He's just walking money is what he is, just walking money.
Then they realized, we got a Japanese fighter who's very dominant.
Now Pride just needs to keep the myth of Sakuraba alive.
They wanted Sakuraba to win. So in the beginning, they brought in fighters who were good, but not super good.
He's gonna jump.
Oh! Eventually, you're gonna have to get great fighters.
Pride finds a storybook opponent. Royler Gracie is Rickson Gracie's brother. It was Rickson who humiliated Japanese wrestler Nobuhiko Takada back at Pride's first event. Sakuraba can avenge that loss if he somehow defeats another Gracie skilled in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, one of the best fighting systems in the world.
Connected.
There you go.
I mean, just to name Gracie, you know that these guys been training since they were puppies, right? 2, 3 years old, they were armbarring people in their freaking diapers.
But in a surprising upset, Sakuraba quickly dominates Royler, easily bending the match and Royler's arm to his will.
The referee has stopped the fight.
It's a freaking Gracie, right? And he beats that person. So now there's interest, could be a fluke.
In fact, it's the beginning of an ongoing feud between Sakuraba and the Gracies. In May of 2000, another brother steps up to defend the family name.
A lot of people that had to shut up over there. I gotta shut them up.
Royce Gracie, the 3-time UFC champion, will battle Pride's King of the Ring.
Sakuraba was going to face Royce Gracie. And Royce said, I don't want to do a 30-minute fight. I want to just keep on going. We do 15 minutes, you have a break, 15 minutes all the time, and we just keep on going till there is a submission or a knockout.
Here we go. Royce goes right.
Dressed in his traditional gi, Royce turns his clothing into a weapon.
We have always the option to fight with the gi. I can trap a limb of yourself and hold my own gi. I can use my gi to get my own collar and have you choke here with my own collar. So I can use my gi in my favor. But my opponent can also use the gi to control me.
Oh, look at this.
Royce may be UFC royalty.
Sakuraba's having fun out there.
But Sakuraba is now the Prince of Pride.
He was a pro wrestler, but he used real techniques.
He's not worried. He just has control.
In Japan, they use strong style. And that means they use real submission techniques. Here in America, it's not. They grab an arm and they go, I feel this. There they only use real submissions.
Remember, Royce demanded they fight until one of them can't fight anymore.
That fight was an hour and a half.
Just sitting there like he's bored. I think he wants Royce to run out of gas.
It's a request Royce will regret.
But Royce is just taking a beating now.
Sakuraba has great wrestling skills, submission skills. He's a great fighter, good brain, calm, under pressure. He is very violent. And at the end, Sakuraba was more physical and has the ability to win the fight.
Sakuraba won that fight by stoppage, just throwing in the towel. He was so tired, he couldn't come out, he couldn't continue anymore.
That is an epic fight. That was an amazing, amazing battle.
Oh, he did it! Oh.
To this day, the match remains the longest fight in MMA history. At the end of the night, even the Gracie family's famous patriarch, Helio Gracie, the godfather of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, has to acknowledge that Sakuraba, the pro wrestler, is the real deal.
Sakuraba being very, very honorable.
With W's against Royce and his brother Royler, Sakuraba earns a new nickname, the Gracie Killer.
He's not even the best pro wrestler in Japan, but he's still beating Gracies.
And he isn't done. By December of 2000, the Gracie Killer has added 2 more to his legend.
Sakuraba was not just a fighter, but an athlete. The hell of an athlete to be able to stand there, take the punch and avoid the punch and give it back.
A pro wrestler who beats 4 Gracies till this day, it's unheard of. It's something that nobody ever did.
Sakuraba went through him like a knife through butter, yeah. Sakuraba, amazing fighter.
Oh, cartwheel!
He's like a precision surgeon.
It looks like he dislocated the elbow. Yeah, twisted all the way around.
But there is still one Gracie Sakuraba hasn't faced, the one who first launched Pride.
The momentum for me to fight Sakuraba start to building to the point was, I have the best approach to fight Sakuraba. And unfortunately, my son departed from this earth.
Rickson Gracie's son, 19-year-old Rickson Gracie, another promising young Gracie fighter, is found dead from a drug overdose in a New York City hotel room. Reeling from that tragic loss, Rickson cancels his fight with Sakuraba. To this day, it remains one of the biggest what-ifs in mixed martial arts.
It was the fight I supposed to do and I didn't because God didn't give it to me. I feel like it was be the biggest fight in my life and it didn't happen, so I have to live with that.
Rickson, the man who helped kickstart an MMA revolution in Japan, never fights professionally again.
The beginning of the 1993, Gracie is the king. And that story changed because of the Pride and Sakuraba.
If Mr. Sakuraba didn't emerge, I don't think Pride would have continued. That's when the Pride took off to become a big brand name and became a big promotion.
While Sakuraba helps clean up Pride's reputation around the legitimacy of its fights, there remains something nefarious in how the business operates.
There was a guy there all the time with a baseball hat. I think he came up one time and he gave me, I think, like $5,000 US just for a good fight. People don't do that, you know? My spider senses were tingling.
The man in the hat is Hiromichi Momose, Pride's shadowy money man. And the company's roster of fighters know he could be their most dangerous opponent.
He was somebody you don't want to mess with. A few of the fighters were invited out to go and have dinner with these people. Nobody has to tell you anything, you just know. These are the guys you're supposed to happy and smile with. Don't matter even if you don't want to, do all you guess and smile with that.
Pride's mystery men expect the fighters to put on an even bigger show in the ring. And in the summer of 2002, organizers present a mind-blowing matchup that no other company would dare promote.
They will deliver the intensity that we want.
Former pro wrestler Kazushi Sakuraba uses his showmanship and submission skills to get Pride Fighting Championships off life support. Pride's revival is even attracting promising new American grapplers to the promotion.
Mark Carr, Kevin Randelman, all those wrestling elite came to Japan at that time. Top US wrestling guys actually competing in Japan.
You have a guy like Quentin Jackson coming in, and he's wearing a chain. But then he started just destroying people. Unbelievable! That's when you also saw that the foreigners start taking over the game.
Ooh, they're gonna go here!
Including former UFC champion Don Frye. On June 23, 2002, Pride presents Demolition, with Don Frye versus Japan's Yoshihiro Takayama as the main event. The 6'5", 275-pound Takayama towering over Frye is a modern-day David versus Goliath, with the fans in attendance rooting for Goliath.
I'm looking up at him, trying to read into his eyes, and finally I saw a little bit of doubt in there. Okay, I got you now, partner.
When the bell rings, Frye and Takayama waste no time.
Grabbed each other right at the scruff of the neck and then just went to pounding, you know? Just stood there and took it. Just trying to knock the head off the other guy. We had such a good fight.
Takayama looks like he's crying on Don Frye's shoulder here.
6 minutes into the first round, Frye manages to take down the giant Takayama. The fight also goes down as one of the greatest in MMA history.
We were walking through the hallway and going to the bus, and Takayama comes out, and he looked like hell, you know, because he broke, 3 or 4 bones in his face. He suffered physically, from that fight. But hell, that fight made him a hero. He said, Don, son, I'm sorry. So what for? It's for not giving you a good enough fight, Said, you're crazy. You give me a better fight, you'd have killed me. It was my best fight ever, and my best opponent ever, you know? God bless him.
2 months later, on August 28, 2002, Pride puts on an even more spectacular event called Shockwave. This pay-per-view battle royale pits fighters from Pride against those of its strongest competitor, the kickboxing promotion K1. It's a level of spectacle never before seen in modern combat sports.
Pride at the time was a big event, sensational, because they tried to make something unseen, you know, in terms of lights, in terms of show, size of the arenas, and the level of the fighters.
Production value of Pride Fighting Championships is uncanny. I mean, it's the most insane thing.
They had these guys on with huge drums. Boom, boom. I was thinking at the time, I was thinking, holy shit. It was just a massive thing. It was just incredible.
Shockwave's opening ceremony features skydivers and a colossal Olympic-sized torch lit by Helio Gracie and pro wrestling god Antonio Inoki. With an estimated 91,000 spectators, it's the largest live audience in MMA history.
It wasn't just a fight, it was like the Super Bowl.
And nobody leaves disappointed.
Antonio Nogueira, he fought Bob Sapp.
Both Nogueira brothers, you know, they were amazing. They came to win. That was the one thing they were determined to do. You saw Bob Sapp pick up one of the brothers and slam him down on his head. Slammed him down on his head, almost broke his neck. You know, and Nogueira, he kept fighting, and he came back and beat Bob. Vanderlei Silva is always great to watch.
Vanderlei Silva, the ex-murderer, that's his nickname. Just a freak of nature. It's scary.
Amazing things that some of those fighters pulled off.
In the main event, K1's Mirko Cro Cop faces off against Pride's favorite son, Sakuraba. And in a shock to Pride fans, Cro Cop beats the Gracie Killer.
Cro Cop's just like a robot. You know, he doesn't seem like he's natural. He's designed, you know, in a laboratory.
Shockwave helps make 2002 Pride's most successful year. In January of 2003, Pride's chairman and co-founder, Naoto Morishita, holds an upbeat press conference where he expresses nothing but confidence in Pride's future.
He'd come out and made the announcement of what their event schedule for 2003 was going to be. I'm Miro Mijatovic, and I was the most powerful fight manager and agent in the peak of Japanese fight industry. I'd heard they'd gone through a lot of difficult issues with their funders, and the fact that he'd made then the announcement of having their 2003 event schedule was seen as very positive and exciting news for Pride.
But only a day later, a devastating reversal.
Morishita, he was found dead in a hotel room at the Tokyo Hilton.
He hung himself. What? Why? What's going on?
Supposedly he was with his mistress or lover in the room, and she disappeared very soon after that. People in the entertainment industry in Japan or in the gangster world, they will know that that has all the usual elements of basically a yakuza hit.
Oh man, that guy was a sweet guy. He was a sweetheart. He was a good man, and you just could tell he was a great guy, man. I really liked that guy.
Do you remember what you heard about his death?
I heard that he died, and yeah, just that he died.
Yeah, something.
I kind of don't want to step on toes around, so I'm trying to give you a story without stepping on other toes at the same time, but trying to give you what I know.
Was he murdered?
I don't know. According to everybody else, yes, but for myself, I don't know. You know, it's hard to say. And not only that, you don't want to say on TV.
For those aware of the shady characters working in the shadows at Pride, Naoto Morishita's death the day after his upbeat press conference is suspicious. But what authorities see is an open and shut case.
The police concluded it's just accident. Who knows? Who knows? It's an accident, they say. It's a kinky S&M stuff. That's what they say. And then by mistake, he hung himself. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Do you believe that story?
No, I don't. Mr. Momose, who was always on the ring side of Pride at the time, he was, heavily involved in, Yakuza.
The Yakuza is Japan's homegrown crime syndicate. And while organized crime has been linked for decades to combat sports across the world, in Japan, the Yakuza is a multi-headed hydra with tendrils wrapped around many aspects of Japanese life.
The mafia is involved on the coffee shop. The mafia is involved on the laundromat. The mafia is involved on the movie theater. They can do everything they want. They rule the city.
Yakuza, obviously, a big part of the country, but for some reason, you're not supposed to admit it.
It's very customary for a Yakuza, a mobster, to be associated with the entertainment business. Every major Japanese record company, entertainment company, hired ex-Yakuza to be their executive so they can accommodate the Yakuza.
And while there's no known link between Naoto Morishita and the Yakuza, following his death, Pride announces his successor will be the promotion's co-founder, Nobuyuki Sakakibara. And here, things get murky.
Mr. Sakakibara was a businessman who is running a Pride with Mr. Morishita. He was basically a number two of the company. So when Morishita passed away, it was natural for number two guy to step up to the number one spot.
But when Sakakibara assumes control, a new Yakuza family enters the picture.
I sort of had this thing that the more you get involved in talking about all the Yakuza stuff, the more that you're going to have to be involved in that game. I mean, my policy was, I don't know anything about this, and I don't want to know. And then suddenly I saw, some sort of gangster war was about to happen in front of my eyes. It sort of, for me, it was just like, oh, this is just the shit that happens.
And that gangster shit starts happening at a Pride event in November of 2003.
Two groups of big Yakuzas were fighting. All these Yakuzas were in backstage, calling shots or demanding something. That's when, I can't name names, the original Yakuza group who was backing the Pride got pushed over by a new group that came in with the new president.
All right, now they're going to have a gang war in Tokyo Dome while their biggest event ever is being telecast on live TV. It's like, oh yeah, of course, Pride, that's what they're going to do, right?
Well, Pride's future is now in the hands of Sakakibara, who denies any involvement with the Yakuza. By 2003, the company's legacy as a world-class fighting promotion is already assured.
Pride Fighting Championships was the greatest thing on the planet. Before Sakakibara got involved in it, it was a great place to work. Great place to do business,
Pride from 1990s to early 2000, it's a golden era, first golden era of MMA. They did produce one of the best fights in history, one of the best tournaments in history. I think it left a profound impact on many MMA fans' mind. I think fans was hoping that Pride would continue.
Put money into that car. I want my money back. Let's look at the numbers. Ms. Gobo, the judge said, holding up a hand to stop the argument. She was not a woman who enjoyed complex math, but this calculation was starkly simple. You drove this vehicle for 3 years. Your monthly payment was $216. Is that correct? Yes, Tammy said defensively. So for 3 years, you essentially rented a reliable vehicle for $216 a month. Do you have any idea how cheap that is? You cannot rent a bicycle for that amount of money over 3 years. The judge leaned over the bench. You are not out any money. You got a fantastic deal. And now you have inherited a Chrysler convertible from your late father. You have a car to drive. Tammy crossed her arms. He took my car. It was his car too, and you stopped paying for it. The judge corrected sharply. He stepped up. He made the payments for the last 6 months. He just dropped over to $1,000 to pay off the bank completely. He is trying to sell it to get out from under the debt of this terrible mistake you both made. The judge locked eyes with Tammy. Let's not be unconscionable here. You drove a car for 3 years for $200 a month. That was your investment. Not a penny more. Not a penny less. He needs to sell this car to recoup a fraction of the $10,000 he fronted you. The judge extended her hand toward the bailiff. The plaintiff requires your signature on the lien release so he can sell the vehicle. Tammy hesitated, the stubbornness warring with the undeniable logic of the bench. She looked at Kyle, who stood rigidly, waiting. Finally, the fight drained out of her. She was tired of the argument, tired of the ghost of their relationship haunting her paperwork. Fine, Tammy muttered. Good, the judge said, striking the gavel. Judgment for the plaintiff. The defendant will surrender the signed lien release. You chalk this up to a life lesson. Ms. Gobo, you got a cheap ride for 3 years. And Mr. Dean Hard. The judge pointed the handle of the gavel at Kyle. Never cozen alone again. Court is adjourned. Chapter 6, Beyond the Verdict. The heavy mahogany doors of the courtroom clicked shut, sealing out the hum of the departing gallery. Inside her chambers, the air was still, smelling faintly of old paper, leather bindings, and the jasmine tea sitting on her desk. The judge unzipped the front of her black robe, shrugging the heavy garment off her shoulders and draping it over a high back chair. She walked over to the window, looking out over the city. It had been a long docket. A dog buried in the woods, a totaled car, a trashed rental home, a bitter ex-couple squabbling over a lien. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Her bailiff, Kevin, stepped in, carrying a stack of fresh case files for tomorrow. Quite a day, Judge, Kevin remarked, setting the files down. That first case, I really thought we were going to see some sort of monster who threw a dog out like trash. Instead, we got a guy who just tried to be neighborly. The judge turned from the window, a wry smile touching the corners of her mouth. You know this job, Kevin. The papers tell you one story, and the humans standing at the podium tell you another. It's always easier for people to wrap their sadness in a blanket of anger. Ms. Johnson couldn't process her grief, so she weaponized it. She picked up her teacup, letting the warmth seep into her palms. But it wasn't the dog case that stuck with me today. It was the Spradley sisters, the landlord dispute. Kevin nodded, leaning against the doorframe, leaving the house in shambles. Yes, that, but also the kids, The judge said softly, "Did you catch what they said about the children in their care? They said they were foster kids, right? And then they said they had adopted them." The judge walked back to her desk, her expression clouding over. That detail brought me right back to my roots in family court. It's a tragedy we see far too often. How so? Subsidized adoptions, the judge explained, tracing the rim of her teacup. The government, quite rightly, wants to incentivize people to take these children out of the foster care system and provide them with permanent, loving homes. So, they provide financial stipends to the adoptive parents. In many cases, it's a blessing. It allows good families to afford the extra care. She paused, her eyes darkening as the memory of the Spradley sisters' chaotic, defensive testimony replayed in her mind. But here's the rub, she continued. While a child is in foster care, there is oversight. Social workers visit, the courts check in. There's a safety net, however frayed it might be. But once that adoption is finalized, the stipend continues, but the oversight vanishes. The government is no longer responsible for checking up on those children. Kevin frowned, connecting the dots, and given the way those two lived, the destruction they left behind in that house, the instability, the complete lack of accountability. Exactly, the judge sighed, sitting down heavily in her leather chair. It makes you question the types of people who are accepting these stipends. They took those children into a home they ultimately trashed, a neighborhood they deemed unsafe, and then they fled in the middle of the night, leaving a cousin and a pile of garbage in their wake. And no one from the state will ever knock on their new door to see if those kids have a clean bed to sleep in. Silence stretched across the chambers, heavy with the weight of things the law could see but could not always fix. We adjudicate the damages to the drywall. Kevin, the judge murmured, looking at the closed file on her desk. $5,800 to fix a door and clean up soda stains. But there is no judgment, no fine, and no gavel strike that can fix the damage being done to those children. Hopefully, Kevin offered gently, it's all good. Maybe they just had a bad run, a momentary lapse. As a family court judge, I saw a mixed bag of success stories. She replied, "We can only hope this one falls into the right side of the bag." Miles away from the courthouse, the evening settled over the city, touching the lives of those who had passed before the bench. April Johnson sat in her quiet living room. She wasn't angry anymore. She simply felt empty. She held the small Ziploc bag containing Ice's collar and the tuft of gray hair. Tomorrow, she decided, she would buy a nice frame for it. It wasn't an urn, but it was a memory. Across the street, Joel Clockey sat on his porch with his own dog, drinking a cold beer. He watched the sunset, feeling a profound sense of relief. He had done his neighborly duty, he had survived the backlash, and he was finally free. Timothy Dehorst was boarding a crowded bus to his second job. He looked out the window, calculating how many shifts it would take to pay Daniel Druss the $3,600 he owed him. The fatigue was deep in his bones, but the lie he had been telling himself was finally dead. He owed the money. It was time to pay. And Kyle Deanhart stood in his driveway, holding a freshly signed lien release. He placed a bright red for sale sign in the windshield of the used car. He looked at the paperwork, then looked at the car, making a silent, unbreakable promise to himself he would never, ever, under any circumstances, co-sign a loan again. Back in her chambers, the judge finished her tea. She closed the files, straightened her desk, and turned off the lamp. Tomorrow, the mahogany doors would open again. More anger, more sadness, more lies, and more truths. The gavel was waiting. Chapter 7. Something borrowed, something ruined. The following Tuesday brought a different kind of storm into the courtroom. It wasn't about landlords or car loans. It was about the fragile, explosive nature of female friendship, wrapped in layers of tulle and white silk. Chloe Miller and Sarah Jenkins had been best friends since middle school. They had shared lockers, secrets, and heartbreaks. When Chloe got engaged to her college sweetheart, it was a foregone conclusion that Sarah would be her maid of honor. But weddings have a funny way of acting like a pressure cooker, exposing every hidden crack in a relationship. 3 weeks before the wedding, Sarah's own engagement had spectacularly fallen apart. Chloe, consumed by seating charts and floral arrangements, had tried to be supportive, but her radiant bride-to-be energy felt like a spotlight on Sarah's fresh grief. The fracture point came the night before the wedding. Chloe had purchased a custom-made, $2,400 ivory lace gown. Because she was staying at a chaotic Airbnb with her entire extended family, she asked Sarah to do her one final, crucial favor: take the dress, safely encased in its protective garment bag, to Sarah's quiet, secure hotel room across from the venue. "I'll guard it with my life," Sarah had promised, her smile tight. But that night, after a tense rehearsal dinner where Sarah felt ignored and pushed to the side, she retreated to her hotel room alone. She opened a bottle of Merlot. She stared at the opaque white garment bag hanging on the closet door. What happened next was a matter of intense dispute. According to Chloe, she arrived at the bridal suite the next morning to find Sarah sobbing and the bottom half of her dream dress stained with a massive, irregular splash of dark red wine. The wedding day was saved only by a frantic, tear-filled trip to a local bridal outlet for a deeply discounted, ill-fitting replacement. The friendship, however, was dead on arrival. Now, they stood in small claims court. Chloe was suing Sarah for the $2,400 cost of the ruined dress, plus the $400 cost of the emergency replacement. "Court, come to order," the bailiff announced. The judge settled into her chair. opening the file for case for 1088, Miller v. Jenkins. She looked at the two young women standing at the podiums. The physical distance between them was only a few feet, but the emotional chasm was vast. Ms. Miller, the judge began, looking at the plaintiff. You are suing your former maid of honor for destroying your wedding dress. Tell me what happened. Chloe took a deep breath, her hands gripping the edges of the podium. Your Honor, I trusted her. She took my dress to her hotel room for safekeeping. The next morning, it looked like someone had thrown a glass of wine on it. It was completely ruined. And what did Ms. Jenkins tell you happened? She said it was an accident, that she tripped while holding a glass of wine near the closet. But, Your Honor, the dress was supposed to be inside a heavy, zipped canvas garment bag. The bag didn't have a single drop of wine on it. The stain was only on the dress itself. The judge's eyebrows raised. She turned her piercing gaze toward the defendant. Is that true, Ms. Jenkins? The protective bag was clean, but the dress inside was stained? Sarah shifted nervously, her face flushed. Yes, Your Honor, but it wasn't on purpose. I took the dress out of the bag. Why? The judge asked, her tone sharp. Why would you take another woman's custom wedding dress out of its protective covering the night before the wedding while drinking red wine? Sarah's voice trembled. I just wanted to look at it. I was sad about my own wedding being canceled. I just wanted to see it in the light. And I had a glass of wine in my hand, and I tripped on the rug, and it splashed. You tripped, the judge repeated, dripping with skepticism. Yes, Ms. Jenkins, let me explain something to you about human nature and the concept of negligence, the judge said, leaning forward. When someone entrusts you with a fragile, expensive item, especially an item with immense emotional value, like a wedding dress, your duty of care is extremely high. The judge picked up a photograph submitted as evidence. It showed the ivory lace dress, its hem soaked in a jagged crimson stain. You were feeling resentful, the judge observed astutely. You were nursing a broken heart while watching your best friend celebrate her upcoming marriage. You took the dress out of the bag, which you had no business doing while consuming alcohol. Whether you intentionally threw the wine or drunkenly tripped is almost irrelevant to the law. You assumed the risk the moment you unzipped that bag with a glass of Merlot in your hand. But I didn't mean to ruin her day. Sarah cried, tears finally spilling over. She was my best friend. And you were hers, the judge replied softly, yet firmly. But friendship does not absolve you of financial responsibility for gross negligence. You ruined a piece of property worth $2,400 because you couldn't manage your own envy and grief for one night. The judge set the photograph down. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,800 to cover the cost of the ruined dress and the emergency replacement. She picked up her gavel. Perhaps in time, you two can forgive each other. But today, Ms. Jenkins, you are going to pay the bill. The gavel struck the sounding block with a sharp crack. Court is adjourned. As Chloe gathered her paperwork, she didn't look triumphant. She just looked tired. She had won the money, but looking across the aisle at Sarah, who was openly weeping into her hands, Chloe realized the true cost of the lawsuit. The dress could be replaced. The money could be paid back. But the girl who had promised to stand by her side through thick and thin was gone forever. Another casualty of the courtroom's unforgiving light. Chapter 8: The Serpent in the Living Room. Roommates are inherently a gamble. You roll the dice hoping for a quiet, clean professional who pays the bills on time. But sometimes the universe deals you a Leo Vance. Marcus Thorne, a junior accountant who found peace in spreadsheets and color-coded pantry shelves, had lived with Leo for 6 months. Leo was a self-described aspiring DJ and sound curator, which effectively meant he slept until 2 in the afternoon and left unwashed dishes in the sink until they grew their own ecosystems. Marcus tolerated him mainly because Leo's portion of the rent always magically cleared on the 1st of the month, until the day it didn't. On a brisk morning in November, Marcus woke up to find Leo's bedroom door wide open. The mattress was gone, the haphazard piles of clothes had vanished, and the closet was bare. In the center of the living room, sitting heavily on Marcus's favorite rug, was a massive glass terrarium. Inside the terrarium, coiled around an artificial log, was a 4-foot-long ball python named Noodles. Pinned to the glass was a frantic note scribbled on a torn piece of a pizza box. Bro, got a gig in Austin. Leaving on tour. Keep an eye on Noodles for me. Be back in a few months. Peace. Marcus, who possessed a profound, cold sweat-inducing fear of reptiles, stared at the snake in sheer horror. The snake flicked its forked tongue, seemingly equally unimpressed with the arrangement. For 3 agonized months, Marcus was trapped. Leo ignored all calls, texts, and emails, left with no choice and a lease solely in his name. Marcus had to front the entirety of the rent and utilities. Even worse, he had to care for the python. This involved trembling trips to the pet store to buy frozen mice, which he had to thaw in his kitchen sink, a process that nearly drove him to tears every single time. When Leo finally swaggered back into town, tan and completely oblivious to the chaos he had caused, Marcus didn't welcome him with open arms. He welcomed him with a lawsuit. Now, they stood in small claims court. Marcus, wearing a sharp gray suit, stood rigidly at the plaintiff's podium. Leo, wearing a vintage band tee and sunglasses perched on his head, lounged at the defendant's podium as if waiting for a latte at a coffee shop. The judge opened case for 1091, Thorne v. Vance. She read over the complaint, her lips pressing into a thin, unimpressed line. Mr. Thorne, the judge began, her voice echoing in the quiet room. You are suing your former roommate for 2 months of unpaid utility bills, carpet cleaning fees, and $400 in reptile maintenance and emotional distress? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus said, adjusting his glasses. He abandoned his pet python in our shared apartment without any warning or financial provision. I am terrified of snakes, Your Honor. I had to buy rodents, frozen rodents. The judge suppressed a microscopic smirk before turning her steely gaze on Leo. Mr. Vance, is this accurate? Did you abandon a constricting reptile in this man's living room? Leo leaned forward, resting his elbows on the podium. Judge, abandon is a heavy word. I went on tour. It was a career opportunity. I left Noodles in a secure habitat. Snakes are super low maintenance. You just feed Emma mouse-like. Once a week. I figured Marcus wouldn't mind chilling with him for a bit. You figured he wouldn't mind, the judge repeated, her voice dropping an octave. Yeah, we were boys. Let me disabuse you of a few notions, Mr. Vance, the judge said, picking up her pen and tapping it rhythmically on the desk. First, a shared lease is a legal contract, not a casual suggestion. You cannot simply vanish on tour and leave your roommate holding the bag for the electricity and internet you both signed up for. I wasn't using the electricity, Leo protested weakly. Your snake was. Marcus shot back. The heat lamp was on 24/7. That is correct, the judge noted, holding up a receipt Marcus had provided. Furthermore, Mr. Vance, leaving a live animal, especially a specialized exotic pet, in the care of someone without their explicit prior consent is not chilling. It is wildly irresponsible. Leo shifted his weight, the confident swagger beginning to evaporate under the heat of the bench. I mean, I'm taking the snake back today. No harm, no foul, right? Wrong, the judge snapped. She looked at the itemized list Marcus had submitted. Mr. Thorne is not running a free exotic animal boarding facility. He incurred costs for food, substrate, and specialized heating bulbs, not to mention the fact that when you dragged your mattress out, you tore a massive hole in the living room carpet, which he also had to pay to repair. That carpet was already sketchy, Leo mumbled. The judge slammed the file shut. I have heard enough. Mr. Vance, your behavior is the epitome of selfishness. You treated a roommate like a storage unit and a pet like a disposable accessory. You will reimburse Mr. Thorne for the utilities, the carpet repair, and the entirely justified cost of keeping your abandoned reptile alive. She picked up the gavel. Judgment for the plaintiff in the full amount of $1,250. And Mr. Vance? Leo looked up, startled. If I ever hear of you abandoning an animal again, the financial penalty will be the least of your concerns. Get out of my courtroom. The gavel cracked down like thunder. Marcus let out a long, shuddering sigh of relief. He gathered his meticulous spreadsheets and marched out of the courtroom. Behind him, Leo Vance slowly picked up his paperwork, finally realizing that the real world didn't operate on vibes and iOS. As they left the room, the bailiff, Kevin, stepped up to the bench to collect the file. A python, Judge, Kevin chuckled. That's a new one. The judge allowed herself a full smile as she stood up. Roommates, Kevin. They are infinitely more unpredictable than the law. Call the next case. Chapter 9, The House of Cards. The American dream often comes with a backyard, and a backyard, ideally, comes with a deck. For Evelyn Vance, a retired school teacher with a penchant for hosting neighborhood barbecues, a custom wooden deck was her ultimate retirement gift to herself. She had saved diligently, amassing a budget of $8,000. Enter Tommy the Hammer Rossi. Tommy was a contractor by trade, but a salesman by nature. He drove a pristine, lifted truck with a magnetic logo on the side that read Rossi Premier Builds. When he met Evelyn in her backyard, he charmed her with grand visions of multi-level cedar planking, ambient solar lighting, and a built-in fire pit. He was smooth, confident, and, most importantly, quoted her exactly $8,000, which he demanded upfront to secure the best lumber prices before the summer rush. Evelyn, swayed by his charisma, wrote the check. Construction began 2 weeks later. Tommy arrived with a crew of exactly one, his teenage nephew, who seemed more interested in his phone than the radial arm saw. For 10 days, the sound of hammering and the whine of power tools echoed through the neighborhood. When it was finished, it looked acceptable. Not quite the multi-level cedar paradise Tommy had promised, but it was a deck. Evelyn paid him no further mind and sent out invitations for her daughter's college graduation party. The true nature of Tommy's craftsmanship was revealed on a humid Saturday afternoon in June. With 30 guests mingling on the new structure, sipping iced tea and eating potato salad, a loud, ominous groan echoed from beneath the floorboards. Before anyone could react, the center of the deck simply gave up. The wood splintered with a deafening crack, and a 10 by 10 foot section sagged violently, dropping nearly to feet into the dirt below. Plates shattered. Guests screamed, scrambling toward the lawn. Miraculously, no one was seriously injured, but Evelyn's pride and her backyard were in ruins. An independent structural engineer, hired by a furious Evelyn the following week, delivered a damning report. Tommy hadn't used cedar, he had used cheap, untreated pine. He hadn't poured concrete footings, he had rested the support posts directly on the topsoil. And instead of heavy-duty galvanized lag bolts, he had secured the entire structure with standard drywall screws, which had sheared clean off under the weight of the guests. Now, Evelyn and Tommy stood in the harsh light of the courtroom. The judge opened the file for case for 1102, Vance v. Rossi Builds. Ms. Vance, the judge said, looking at the horrifying photos of the collapsed deck, you are suing Mr. Rossi for the return of your $8,000 plus an additional $1,000 for the cost of safely demolishing this hazard. Yes, Your Honor, Evelyn said, her voice tight with suppressed fury. He built a death trap. I had 30 people on that deck. My elderly mother was out there. The judge turned her penetrating gaze to Tommy. Mr. Rossi, I am looking at an engineer's report that says you use drywall screws to secure load-bearing joists. Drywall screws. Tommy adjusted the collar of his polo shirt, flashing a nervous, 1,000-watt smile. Well, Your Honor, it's about tensile strength and weight distribution. Those screws are rated for a lot of pressure. I think the issue here is that Ms. Vance exceeded the maximum occupancy of the structure. I told her it was a leisure deck, not a dance floor. A leisure deck, the judge repeated, her voice dripping with pure ice. Show me in your contract where you specified a maximum occupancy. Tommy fumbled with his paperwork. It's industry standard. It's an implied clause. It's a fabrication, the judge snapped. Let's look at this so-called contract you gave her. It's a single piece of paper with a handwritten price. There are no material specifications. There is no blueprint. And, worst of all, there are no permit numbers. The judge leaned over the bench, locking eyes with the contractor. Did you pull a city permit for this build, Mr. Rossi? Tommy swallowed hard, the charm completely vanishing. No, Your Honor. Permits just slow down the process. I was trying to save her money. You were trying to avoid a municipal inspector who would have taken one look at this pile of kindling and shut you down immediately. The judge thundered. You took advantage of a retiree. You took $8,000 of her hard-earned money, built a structurally unsound hazard, and endangered her family. The judge picked up the photos of the collapsed deck and tossed them back onto her desk in disgust. Contractors like you are the reason people don't trust the trades. You are not a builder. You are a con artist with a hammer. She grabbed her gavel. Judgment for the plaintiff in the full amount of $10,000. And I strongly suggest you find a new line of work before your negligence puts someone in the hospital. The gavel slammed down. Evelyn Vance let out a shaky breath, finally feeling vindicated. As Tommy Rossi hastily gathered his messy paperwork and hurried out of the courtroom, his premier builds empire effectively dismantled. The gallery remained silent, absorbing the sharp sting of justice. Chapter 10, The Stolen TikTok. Family estates have a unique way of turning grief into a battleground. When Eleanor Higgins passed away at the age of 82, she left behind a modest house, a lifetime of memories, and to fiercely opposite children, Brenda and Gary. Brenda, the older sister, was deeply sentimental. She cherished the history of their family and saw value in the worn, deeply personal items their mother had collected. Gary, the younger brother, was chronically unemployed and saw the estate purely as an opportunity to liquidate assets and move on. The crown jewel of the Higgins living room was a massive, ornate grandfather clock. It had been in the family for 3 generations, carved from dark walnut, with a brass pendulum that swung with a soothing, hypnotic rhythm. The clock was a masterpiece of 19th century horology. Eleanor had always told Brenda, "When I'm gone, the clock is yours." But Eleanor had died without a formal will, leaving the siblings to sort through the house together. Because Brenda lived 3 states away, the task of hosting the initial estate sale fell to Gary. Brenda had given him strict instructions over the phone. Sell the old couches, sell the lawnmower, sell the dishes, but do not touch the grandfather clock. I am renting a van next month to come and get it. Yeah, sure. Gary had mumbled over the line, distracted by a football game. 2 weeks later, Brenda received a text from a neighbor who had attended the sale. Gary sold the clock. Some guy in a pickup truck hauled it away. Brenda panicked. She called Gary 20 times before he finally picked up. "Where is the clock, Gary?" she shrieked. "Relax," Gary groaned. "It was huge, Brenda. It was blocking the hallway where people needed to walk to get to the back bedrooms. Some guy offered me $200 cash for it, and I took it. I'll split the money with you, 50-50. Brenda hung up, trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. She didn't want $100. She wanted the clock that had chimed the hours of her entire childhood. She immediately contacted an antique appraiser, sending them high-resolution photos of the clock she had taken over the holidays. The appraiser's verdict was swift. It was a rare Seth Thomas model, easily worth $4,500 at auction. Unable to track down the anonymous buyer in the pickup truck, Brenda did the only thing she could do. She sued her own brother. Case for 1,115, Higgins v. Higgins. The siblings stood at the podiums, refusing to look at each other. Brenda clutched a thick binder of appraisals, text messages, and family photos. Gary stood with his hands in his pockets, looking profoundly bored. "This is a painful one," the judge began, looking between the brother and sister. "Miss Higgins, you are suing your brother for $4,500, the appraised value of a family heirloom he sold without your permission." "Yes, Your Honor," Brenda said, her voice wavering. "Our mother promised it to me. He knew that. I specifically told him not to sell it." The judge turned to Gary. "Mr. Higgins, you sold a 19th century walnut grandfather clock for $200 at a garage sale?" Gary shrugged. "Judge, I'm not an antique dealer. I'm just a guy trying to clean out a house. It was heavy. It was in the way. I needed to clear the floor space to sell the dining table." "You needed to clear floor space," the judge repeated, rubbing her temples. "Did your sister explicitly tell you not to sell the clock?" Gary hesitated. "She might have mentioned she liked it, but there was no will. Half the stuff in that house was legally mine." "Ah, the old there was no will defends, the judge said, leaning forward. She pointed a finger at Gary. Let's assume, for a moment, that you owned half that clock. That means you had a fiduciary duty to your sister to get a fair market price for a shared asset. Instead, out of sheer laziness, you practically gave away a valuable antique to the first person who waved a crisp $100 bills in your face. The judge picked up the appraisal document Brenda had submitted. This isn't just about money, Mr. Higgins. This is about respect. Your sister isn't here because she wants a payday. She's here because you treated your family's history like an inconvenience. You took something irreplaceable and discarded it because you couldn't be bothered to move it out of the hallway. Gary finally looked somewhat ashamed, his eyes dropping to the floor. I didn't know it was worth that much. Ignorance is not a defense against gross negligence, the judge fired back. You robbed your sister of her inheritance, and you robbed yourself of a valuable asset. Since you cannot produce the clock, you will produce the cash. The judge picked up her pen, filling out the final judgment form. Money cannot replace an heirloom, Miss Higgins, the judge said gently to Brenda, and I am deeply sorry for your loss, but it is the only remedy this court can provide. The judge looked back at Gary, her expression hardening. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $4,500. You owe your sister the full appraised value. Perhaps writing that check will teach you the true cost of laziness. The gavel fell, echoing loudly in the quiet courtroom. Brenda Higgins closed her binder. The victory felt hollow, as lawsuits between family members always do. She walked out of the courtroom, leading her brother behind to figure out how to pay a massive debt over a clock that was already miles away, ticking in someone else's living room. Chapter 11, The Cabo Mirage. The promise of white sand, bottomless margaritas, and escaping the relentless gray slush of a Midwestern February is a powerful intoxicant. For Maya Lin, a meticulous graphic designer who planned her life in color-coded spreadsheets, a trip to Cabo San Lucas was exactly what the doctor ordered. The plan was simple. Maya and her best friend, Harper Davis, would split an all-inclusive 5-day resort package. Since Maya had a premium travel credit card, she fronted the $3,000 cost for the flights and the luxury twin-bed suite. Harper promised to Venmo her half of the money, $1,500, by Friday. Friday came and went, then another Friday. Whenever Maya brought it up, Harper had an excuse ready. Her car needed new brakes. Her dog had a sudden vet bill. Don't worry, babes, Harper assured her over brunch. I'll get it to you before we fly out. Promise. Maya, valuing the friendship over the awkwardness of demanding a debt, let it slide. They bought matching swimsuits. They shared itineraries. But 48 hours before their flight was scheduled to depart, the illusion shattered. Maya was sitting on her suitcase, trying to zip it shut, when her phone buzzed. It was a text from Harper. Maya, I am so sorry. I can't go to Cabo. Jax invited me to go camping in the Red River Gorge this weekend. It's getting serious between us, and I can't say no. Have a margarita for me. Love you. Maya stared at the screen, her vision going red. Jax was a bartender Harper had been dating for exactly 3 weeks. Harper was abandoning a $3,000 luxury vacation to sleep in a muddy tent with a virtual stranger. Maya called her immediately. Harper, what are you talking about? Our flight is on Thursday morning. I paid for everything. I know, Harper said, sounding breezy and distracted. But the package is non-refundable anyway, right? So it's not like you get the money back if I don't go. You get the whole room to yourself. Total luxury. You owe me $1,500. Maya yelled into the phone. I can't pay for a trip I'm not going on. Maya, that's not fair. Gotta go. Jax is here. Have fun in Mexico. Maya went to Cabo alone. She drank the margaritas. She sat on the beach. She enjoyed the luxury suite. And the moment the plane touched down back in the Midwest, she drove straight to the courthouse and filed a small claims lawsuit. Case for 1129. Lynn v. Davis. The two former friends stood at the podiums, the icy chill between them colder than the February wind rattling the courthouse windows. Maya presented her credit card statements and a printed stack of text messages confirming the initial agreement to split the trip. Ms. Davis, the judge said, her tone dangerously even. You agreed to go on a trip. Ms. Lynn paid for it on the explicit condition that you would reimburse her for half. You canceled 2 days before the flight to go camping with a man you had known for 21 days. Harper adjusted her scarf, trying for a sympathetic smile. Your Honor, things come up. It's a free country. I shouldn't have to pay for a vacation I didn't actually take. Maya still went. She used the hotel room. She used the resort credits. Ms. Davis, the judge interrupted, leaning over the bench. A verbal agreement, backed up by corroborating text messages where you repeatedly promised to pay her, is a binding contract. You do not get to unilaterally dissolve a contract because you found a more appealing social engagement. But she got a private suite out of it. Harper protested. She wasn't out any extra money. She was out your money, the judge corrected sharply. When you commit to sharing a financial burden, you lock the other person into that financial reality. She booked a $3 package because she expected to only pay $1. $500. She relied on your promise to her detriment. The judge picked up the stack of text messages. I am looking at your message here. Sent 48 hours before departure. I can't pay for a trip I'm not going on. That's not fair. Let me tell you what isn't fair. Ms. Davis, treating your friends like interest-free credit lines and backing out on your financial obligations because of a new boyfriend. The judge set the papers down and grabbed her pen. Friendship requires respect, and adulthood requires accountability. You showed neither. The judge signed the paper. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500 plus court costs. You are going to pay for that Cabo trip, Ms. Davis, whether you got a tan or not. The gavel came down. Maya picked up her purse, feeling a deep sense of closure. The friendship was over, dead and buried in the sands of Mexico, but the debt was finally settled. Chapter 12, Blurred Lines. Memories are fragile things. We rely on photographs to anchor them to reality, to prove that we were there, that we were young, and that we celebrated. For David and Elena Rostova, their 10th wedding anniversary was a milestone that demanded capturing. They rented out the back room of an upscale Italian restaurant, invited 50 of their closest friends and family, and hired Trent Calloway to document the evening. Trent's website was a minimalist masterpiece featuring sweeping landscapes, moody lighting, and the tagline, capturing the unseen soul of the moment. He charged $800 for 4 hours of event photography, requiring a $400 non-refundable deposit upfront. David and Elena paid the deposit. Trent showed up on the night of the party wearing a black turtleneck, carrying a single camera body and no flash equipment. He spent the evening weaving through the crowd, occasionally snapping a photo, but mostly eating the free appetizers and talking about his upcoming art installation. "Are you getting good shots?" Elena had asked him anxiously halfway through the night, noticing how dark the room was. "I don't just get shots, Elena," Trent had replied, tapping his temple. "I capture the essence. Trust the process." 3 weeks later, Trent sent them a digital link to a gallery titled The Rostova Experience. David and Elena sat on their couch, opened a bottle of wine, and clicked the link. Their excitement quickly turned into sheer, unadulterated horror. There were only 42 photos in the gallery. Of those 42, at least half were completely out of focus, blurry streaks of color where faces should have been. Several photos were extreme close-ups of half-eaten plates of pasta. The pictures of David and Elena cutting their anniversary cake were so underexposed they looked like they were standing in a cave. Not a single photo featured both of Elena's parents looking at the camera. David immediately emailed Trent, demanding an explanation and the raw files. Trent's reply was swift and condescending. "David, you're looking at this through a traditional, bourgeois lens. The blur represents the fleeting nature of time. The darkness symbolizes the intimacy of a decade-long marriage. It's avant-garde bokeh. I do not release raw files. You owe me the remaining $400. David didn't send the $400. Instead, he served Trent with a lawsuit for the return of the initial $400 deposit, claiming breach of contract and failure to deliver a competent service. Case for 1142. Rostova v. Calloway. The judge looked at the laptop screen situated on her bench, clicking through the digital evidence file David had submitted. She paused on a particularly egregious photo blurry, greenish smear that was supposedly Elena's grandmother. Mr. Calloway, the judge said, looking up at the photographer, who stood at the podium looking fiercely misunderstood. Can you explain what I am looking at in Exhibit C? That is a study in motion. Your Honor, Trent said proudly. It captures the kinetic energy of the dance floor. It captures a smudge. Mr. Calloway, the judge replied dryly. And what about Exhibit D? A close-up of a dirty fork resting on a napkin. It's a commentary on consumption and celebration. The judge sighed, taking off her reading glasses. Mr. Calloway, you were not hired by the Museum of Modern Art to create a commentary on consumption. You were hired by a husband and wife to take clear, well-lit photographs of their family and friends at a 10th anniversary party. Art is subjective, Judge, Trent argued, crossing his arms. Art may be subjective, but contract law is objective, the judge countered swiftly. When you hold yourself out as a professional event photographer and accept money to document a specific event, there is an implied warranty of basic competence. The client expects photos where the subjects are recognizable, in focus, and properly exposed. You failed on all 3 counts. I spent for hours there. Trent protested. My time is valuable. My contract explicitly states the deposit is non-refundable. A non-refundable deposit clause protects you from a client canceling, the judge explained, her patience wearing thin. It does not give you license to show up, eat their meatballs, take 40 blurry pictures of nothing, and walk away with their money. You fundamentally breached the contract by failing to provide the service you advertised. The judge turned to David and Elena, who were watching the exchange with grim satisfaction. You cannot sue for the memories you lost, unfortunately. But you certainly do not have to pay this man for ruining the ones he managed to capture. She picked up her pen. Mr. Calloway, your avant-garde bokeh is just a fancy excuse for poor camera skills and a lack of proper lighting equipment. I am voiding the remainder of the contract, and I am ordering you to return the plaintiff's initial deposit. The judge signed the order. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $400. And Mr. Calloway, if you want to be an avant-garde artist, I suggest you find patrons who are willing to pay for blurry smudges. Don't practice on people's anniversaries. The gavel struck. David squeezed Elena's hand. They didn't have the photos they wanted, but as they walked out of the courtroom, they knew they at least had a fantastic story and their money back. Chapter 13, The Phantom Gig. In the digital age, a musician without a music video is like a storefront with no sign. Julian J. Flo Vans, an aspiring indie rapper who worked 40 hours a week at a call center to fund his studio sessions, understood this. He had finally recorded a track he believed was a hit, and he needed visuals to match. Enter Silas Reed. Silas was a 22-year-old freelance videographer who marketed himself heavily on Instagram. His feed was full of drone shots, neon lighting, and profound captions about disrupting the visual narrative. Silas quoted Julian $1,200 for a one-day shoot and a fully edited 3-minute music video, demanding payment upfront to secure the booking and lock down the creative energy. Julian scraped the money together and transferred it via an app. The day of the shoot was chaotic. Silas showed up late, constantly complained about the lighting in the rented warehouse, and spent more time adjusting his beanie than looking through the viewfinder. Still, they shot for 6 hours. Julian performed his heart out to an empty room, trusting the process. "I'll have the first cut to you in a week," Silas promised, packing his gear into the trunk of a battered Subaru. A week passed, then 2. Julian's texts went unanswered. His calls rolled straight to voicemail. Finally, after a month of dodging, Silas replied with a single, devastating email. "AJ, look, I'm not gonna lie. The footage we got is unusable. The vibe was completely off. Your energy didn't match my aesthetic vision for the project. I'm scrapping it because putting my name on a subpar video will ruin my brand. I consider the $1,200 a day rate for my time on set. Good luck with the music." Julian was stunned. He hadn't just lost his money, he had lost the footage entirely. He demanded Silas at least hand over the raw, unedited video files so he could hire someone else to salvage the project. Silas refused. "Raw files are my intellectual property," he fired back. Left with a hole in his savings and a song sitting in the dark, Julian took Silas to small claims court. Case for 1,155. Vance v. Reed. Julian stood at the plaintiff's podium, looking sharp in a pressed button-down shirt. Silas stood opposite him, wearing an oversized graphic tee and an expression of deep boredom. "Mr. Reed," the judge said, scanning the printed email exchange, "you accepted $1,200 to shoot and edit a music video. You did not provide the edited video, and you are currently holding the raw footage hostage because the plaintiff's vibe did not match your aesthetic vision. Have I accurately summarized this absolute nonsense?" Silas sighed heavily, as if forced to explain quantum physics to a toddler. "Your Honor, as an auteur, my brand is my livelihood. I can't release art that compromises my creative standards. He didn't take my direction on set. The footage is bad. Therefore, the project is terminated." "Terminated?" the judge repeated. "Did you include a void clause in your contract?" "It's an unspoken industry standard," Silas deflected. "There are no unspoken standards in this courtroom," the judge shot back. "You entered into a transaction. You were hired to perform a service. You are not Francis Ford Coppola. You are a freelancer who took $1,200 from a young man trying to build his career. If the footage was bad, it was your job as the director to fix the lighting or guide your subject. The judge turned to Julian. Mr. Vance, do you want him to finish editing the video, or do you want your money back? I want my money back, Your Honor, Julian said firmly. I don't trust him to do the work, and I need the funds to hire a real professional. The judge nodded approvingly. She looked back at Silas. Mr. Reed, you claim your day rate is $1,200, but you didn't sell him a day rate. You sold him a completed product. Because you unilaterally decided not to deliver that product, you are in breach of contract. What about my time? Silas protested. I spent 6 hours in a freezing warehouse. Consider it the cost of a harsh lesson in business ethics, the judge replied coldly. You do not get to keep a client's money simply because you regret taking the job. You are ordered to return the $1,200 in full. And if I were you, I would delete the words professional and auteur from your social media profiles until you learn how to honor a contract. The gavel struck with a sharp crack. Julian exhaled, a triumphant smile breaking across his face. He was going to get his music video after all. Chapter 14, The Bitter Harvest. In the sprawling suburbs, property lines are invisible borders defended with the ferocity of medieval kingdoms. For Margaret Penhaligon, a 72-year-old widow, her backyard was her sanctuary. At the very edge of her property stood a magnificent 20-year-old Meyer lemon tree. It was a sprawling, leafy beast that produced hundreds of sweet, fragrant lemons every winter. Unfortunately for Margaret, about 30% of the tree's canopy hung over the wooden fence and directly over the pristine, freshly paved concrete driveway of her neighbor, Arthur Klimping. Arthur was a man who owned a power washer and used it weekly. He despised the lemon tree. During the winter months, ripe lemons would drop like yellow bombs onto his driveway, leaving sticky, acidic stains and attracting bees. He had complained to Margaret repeatedly. Arthur, it's a beautiful tree, Margaret would say, offering him a basket of the fruit. Just kick them to the side. They make wonderful marmalade. I don't want marmalade, Margaret. I want a clean driveway, Arthur would grumble. The law is clear on the matter of overhanging trees. A property owner has the right to trim branches and roots up to the property line, provided the trimming does not permanently damage or kill the tree. But Arthur was not a man for half measures. While Margaret was out of town visiting her sister for a long weekend in March, Arthur snapped. He hired an unlicensed, cut-rate landscaping crew equipped with chainsaws. He didn't just tell them to trim the overhanging branches to the fence line. He told them to push it back as far as you can reach. The crew leaned over the fence and hacked away ruthlessly. They severed massive, primary limbs on Margaret's side of the property line. They decimated the canopy, leaving a lopsided, brutally scarred trunk that bled sap. When Margaret returned home, she collapsed in tears at the sight of her mutilated tree. Within a month, the shock and massive loss of foliage killed the 20-year-old Meyer lemon. It withered into a brittle, gray skeleton. Margaret sued Arthur for $3,500, the estimated cost of purchasing, transporting, and planting a mature, fruit-bearing replacement tree, plus the cost of removing the dead stump. Case for 1,170, Penhaligon v. Klimping. Margaret stood at the podium, leaning slightly on a cane, her eyes red-rimmed. Arthur stood opposite her, arms crossed, unapologetic. Mr. Klimping, the judge said, reviewing the shocking before and after photographs of the lemon tree, you took a chainsaw to a 20-year-old tree that did not belong to you. It was dropping debris on my property. Your Honor, Arthur argued. It was a nuisance. I have the right to abate a nuisance. You have the right to trim the branches vertically up to the boundary line, the judge corrected sharply. You do not have the right to reach over a fence, trespass into the airspace of your neighbor's yard, and butcher the primary structural limbs of the plant. The judge held up a photograph showing the jagged, horizontal cuts on the trunk, clearly situated a full 3 feet onto Margaret's side of the fence. Look at this, Mr. Klimping. This isn't pruning. This is an execution. You didn't just trim the tree. You murdered it because you were too lazy to pick up a few lemons. A few lemons? Arthur scoffed. It was dozens. It was ruining my concrete. Then you should have hired a professional arborist to properly trim the canopy back to the property line without shocking the tree to death, the judge countered. Instead, you hired men to reach over a fence and destroy a piece of property that Ms. Penhaligon had cultivated for 2 decades. The judge turned to Margaret, her tone softening considerably. Ms. Penhaligon, I am so sorry about your tree. I know for a gardener, losing a mature plant feels like losing an old friend. It does, Your Honor, Margaret whispered. I used to make lemonade for my late husband from that tree. The judge's jaw tightened. She looked back at Arthur, her eyes flashing with judicial wrath. Mr. Klimping, your obsession with a spotless driveway has cost you dearly. You are responsible for the destruction of her property. You will pay for the removal of the dead tree, and you will pay top dollar for a mature replacement to be brought in. The judge signed the paperwork with aggressive, heavy strokes of her pen. Judgment for the plaintiff in the full amount of $3,500. And Mr. Klimping, I strongly suggest you learn to live with a little nature, because if you touch a single leaf on her new tree, you will be answering to a much harsher penalty. The gavel cracked down. Margaret Penhaligon smiled through her tears, knowing that while she couldn't get her old tree back, a new one would soon